Hey everybody, this is Sheets, and welcoming DFSChan once again to my meeting. For those of you that don't know him by now, I mean he's been doing LOL videos for the last couple of weeks now, or a week or so, and he's this incredible addition to what we're trying to do here. That being, not just give a guy a fish, right, but teach a guy to fish as well, and especially with these sports that I don't know much about, and Bobby doesn't know much about, to bring someone like him in is really, really big. And we brought him in right for the LOL playoffs, and it's just nonstop action there. So and he's provided an incredible qualitative assessment to these games that kind of go along with my quantitative, don't know anything about the game assessment. And it's incredibly helpful. We've had a lot of good successes, people going off of what he's been saying, and that's terrific. And he's also going to be joining us to help us develop some soccer stuff as well, because the EPL is starting, I guess, the next season, or however, and he could expand on this. But and you could play this in New York as well. So I'm going to probably start playing it, and it's pretty popular. So I figured what I was going to do is the same thing as I did with LOL. So there's one video I'm going to do with him where I can ask him some general questions about DFS soccer. Then he could talk about the slate, and then in the future, maybe he'll just be on. He'll fire one up whenever it's necessary. So, but my first question, and this is the question I have for all sports, because this is what kind of is interesting to me, is what. Now I'm speaking just of GPPs in general. When it comes to building soccer lineups, how important is correlation and stacking? Because it would seem to me, again, just me not knowing anything, that if you get points for kicking the ball back and forth to one another, that it's probably a good idea to get guys that are kicking the ball back and forth to each other. And if you're going to be getting points based on scoring goals and assists, probably a good idea to put guys that are getting assists with people scoring goals. And if you are going to be penalized for giving up goals, probably not a good idea to have your goalie against guys that are on your team. So, I always look at correlation on the one end of the metric is sports like LOL and baseball, even LOL probably more so, but LOL, baseball, hockey, where everything correlates really nicely. And then all the way on the other end of the spectrum, you have like auto racing and MMA and stuff like that, where there's just no correlation between players. And then in the middle, you have sports like basketball and football, where it's not 100% necessary to stack, but sometimes it helps. Where does soccer fall in that type of analysis?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm excited to join you guys for soccer this year. I hope you guys, gain some edge from our videos and our contents. But yeah, that's a good question. For GPP purposes, since you're asking about GPP, yeah, I mean, correlation is very important, because as you know, an assist and a goal are worth the most points on these scoring system. So obviously, depending on how you think the game script will go in each of those matchups. And most people look at, the implied total goal odds, and, as to, like, for example, on this slate, the second matchup, as you can see on Sheet's screen, Brentford versus Crystal Palace, that has the lowest implied goal total. So, that's kind of, you want to lower the ownership on that front, because, you just don't think there's going to be enough goals just based on the Vegas odds. But if you go to the last game of the slate on Manchester City, as most of you guys probably heard of, I mean, that game is supposed to produce more than 3 goals. So, you want to think about who's going to most likely produce an assist. And obviously that comes from, more likely than not, from the wingers, who like to cross the balls, who likes to make a lot of plays, those playmakers, that puts the balls in the boxes. And then obviously the strikers, they naturally are going to be in the position to score. So yeah, for GPP purposes, the ceilings, they call it in soccer, ceilings and floor are more important than probably any other sport, depending on what contest you're playing in. But for GPP, yeah, I mean, correlation is huge. And, I think, obviously, naturally, you want to look at the ownership of that as well, because obviously people are going to be on a lot of the players who are designated to take a lot of set pieces, just like corner kicks and free kicks, because they are the ones who are going to put the balls in the boxes, and they're more likely than not get an assist. So yeah, I mean, correlation is huge.
What is a set piece?
Set piece is, like a dead ball, basically, corner kicks, free kicks, penalty kicks. So, if the ball goes out of bounds, you put the balls in the corner, and then, those are the people who, are designated to, put the balls, cross the balls into the boxes, and you get a point for each cross based on the scoring system on DraftKings. So obviously those are important.
When it comes to construction on DraftKings, what's the most you can play from each team, and what are your construction limits?
Yeah, that's a good point. Like for example, if there's a game like this slate is a little funky because that Manchester City game that you have a mark right there, yeah, that game is supposed to produce a lot of goals. So you want to have, for cash and optimal purposes, you want to have as many Man City players probably from that game.
No, but what are the rules? In other words, like, what's the max you can have? I mean, are you trying to go 4-4, 5-3? Can you play 8 guys from a team? Again, you're operating on the assumption that I know something. So
yeah, my apologies. So you can play up to five players, I believe, okay. But you have to have players from at least three different teams.
Okay.
So, but it's not really like baseball though. I know in baseball, like where you want to stack so many players from each team like that, but in soccer, I just do not see, most people play maybe 3 or 4 players max from each team, okay. Because, like there's only one ball. It's not like baseball where each batter gets an at bat many times throughout the game. There's only one ball to go around, and, it's just, in soccer, usually there's not more than like 3-4 goals in a game, so it's not like baseball where you're going to get like double-digit runs total, at times, but in soccer, that's much more limited.
So it's not like baseball where like in baseball DFS, there's always a conversation of whether you want to have a 5-man stack, a 5-3, 5-2. In like football, there's a conversation of whether you want to have a 2 wide receivers with a 1 receiver running back or something like that. When it comes to just like normal soccer parlance, like what is it? Is there like a typical, construction that is just kind of, whether it's true or not, whether it's like known through the industry as what you're I don't say supposed to do, right? But what is like the most common constructions that win, or is it just not like that?
It is not like that. That's what's unique about soccer. I know in League of Legends, we joke about 4-4-3 and 3-3-1 and all that, 4-2-1. It's just not like that in soccer. It really depends on the matchups and the teams that you're trying to stack. Okay. I mean, you really have to know how that team plays. Like, for example, but, there aren't as many teams in the EPL, so you kind of know how each team plays if you play more than like a couple of weeks or so. Okay. So like Man City, they like to possess the ball a lot more than any other team. And they're the best team in the EPL. That's why they're the biggest favorite. And Norwich is the worst team that just got promoted to this EPL league from the minor league of EPL. So, yeah, so Man City is going to have a lot of ball dominate possession. So that means, their players are going to get a lot more touches than any other team on the slate. So obviously they're going to create a lot more chances and naturally score a lot more points, peripheral points.
Let me just interrupt you for a minute. So again, I'm trying to align this with other sports. So we talk about basketball, for example. There are some teams that are just the best teams, but for whatever reason are not that great for fantasy because they play at a slow pace, because they don't play somebody, guys a lot of minutes or something like that. Then you talk about even League of Legends, which I'm learning a little more about. There are some teams that may well be the best team in the league, but because of their pace, because of their suffocating style, they're not exactly the greatest DFS team. And then you have other teams in like League of Legends, like Invictus Gamers or whatever, who might not be all that good, but when they get it going, they're just fantasy points like all over the place. Is that similar is soccer similar, or is it just like the best team is just going to generate the most fantasy points?
That is similar. It's not, like you said, it's not necessarily the best team that will produce the most DFS points. That's not true. Each team has a different playing style. Like, for example, Man City, like I said, likes to possess a lot of balls. So they like to think you do a lot of passes, short passes. But other teams like, let's say, Crystal Palace in the second game, they like to defend a lot and then go for the counterattack. So, you know, as you know, counterattack, you know, once you steal the ball from the other team, that's when you just, you know, march forward and try to score instead of possessing the ball and such. So, yeah, I mean, that in itself is not great for DFS purposes. That's why they, you know, their game is in the lowest implied total goals, the second game of the slate. So, yeah, I mean, so you kind of have to know which players and what types of, you know, game styles that they like to play with, each team likes to play with. And I can tell you more about that, you know, as we go through the slate, but, you know,
we'll get there. My last general question, and again, God help you if I really get involved in this, because then I'm going to have like a lot of questions, but here's another kind of like overall general question I have. So relative to other sports, okay, like all the stuff that you just told me, all right, how much of soccer, specifically, when I say specifically the stuff that you told me, is known by the people that play DFS? How much edge is there in soccer compared to some of the other sports? You know, because I've heard some people say that it's like really easy to win at soccer. And some people say there's no more edge there. You know, whatever it is. You know, you play baseball, you play League of Legends, you play. So I'm sure you played at some point, like all sports, right? So how would you gauge the public's knowledge of this sport from a DFS perspective relative to itself and relative to other sports?
Soccer is getting up there. I don't think it's obviously up to par as like any other major sports, you know, basketball, baseball. But I think people are starting to learn how to structure better, optimally, and correlatively. Like you said, I mean, I think correlation is something that people don't really think about, like you said. They just look at, you know, who's taking set pieces and who has the highest goal scoring odds, you know, based on the Vegas odds. And they just go for straight up goals and assists potential, the ceiling. But I mean, you know, most of the times there's not enough goals in these soccer games for you to hit that. I mean, the probabilities are low. So you kind of have to look at the combination of those ceilings, but also the floors that each of these players have. And most people don't know that, I feel like. I mean, just based on looking at the GPPs and cash plays, I mean, it's not, if people just go for the you know, the popular names, popular guys. They like to play those like Man City guys, like I said. I mean, popular teams, you know, they like to stack those. But I mean, a lot of the times that's not the most efficient or effective way to go about it.
All right, so we're going to go into the slate, and as we do that, I learned something also recently, is that when you're playing soccer, is this accurate that you probably shouldn't put your lineups in until later, because they don't even release the start? I didn't then realize this. They don't really release the starters until, you know, what, like 1 hour before? Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
Okay. So yeah. So again, if you guys want to play, it's not something that you can go ahead the night before or like that morning and just fire off some lineups and then just leave. I mean, you really have to be aware of what's going on and refresh your projections or whatever you do, refresh your lineups as you kind of get close. And is it I see they all start at 10 a.m., but in games in slates where they start at different times, is it a late swap sport?
They do have it.
Okay. All right. So why don't we just get started? I just see, this is what I see. I see 4 games. They all start at 10 a.m. They all have a cloud on them. and that's literally all that I know. So why don't I try to, like, I'm going to stop the screen share, and then I'm going to try to get you. Can you share your screen or no?
Yeah, let me see how I can do that.
Or do I need to
share screen? Here we go. Oh, it says host disabled participants.
Hold on. All participants. Okay, should be okay. Try again.
Perfect. Yeah, let me pull it up.
All right.
Can you see it okay?
Yep, perfect.
Awesome. So yeah, I can kind of go through each slate today, kind of give you guys an overview as to what's going to happen. Sheets already showed you what, you know, DraftKings pricing and the slate looks like on that screen. So I'm just going to go through, I guess, you know, my notes, and then I'll, you know, share that DraftKings screen as well later. So yeah, the first game of the matchup of the slate is Aston Villa versus Newcastle. Aston Villa is the second heaviest favorite on the slate, other than Man City, which I'll go over later. And then Newcastle as the underdog at plus 320. Newcastle looked horrible. As Sheet mentioned, this is the second week of the EPL. All the teams had their first game, season opening games last weekend. But yeah, Newcastle looked horrible, and deservingly Aston Villa is the favorite. And like I said, for every week I'll kind of go over the soccer DFS 101 tips every week, because I mean some of you guys, this is new to it, new to you, so I'll go over the strategies. But the optimal way of selecting players from these matchups is, like I said, the players that will have the balls on their feet the most. I mean, it's as simple as that. And what that means is, those players that will have some shares of set pieces, that will likely put the balls in the boxes to create chances, people who take corner kicks, free kicks, people who are on the wings, on the formation wise, they're on the wings to be able to cross the balls into the boxes, just, based on the field position. And then obviously those people, and forward, where they like to score, they are good at scoring goals, because goals and assists are very important, stat wise. So for Aston Villa, those people would be Buendia and Leon Bailey. They may share some set pieces, but Buendia is more likely than not than Bailey that he's going to get a lot more peripheral points. Peripheral points are basically the points that you would get just in the open field, open pitch, where, in the middle of a game, instead of the set pieces like I'm talking about, where, the ball is stopped and the game is stopped and then you do a set piece. It's where, you're constantly in the flow of the game, where he likes to create chances, in the flow of a game. So Buendia does a lot more than Bailey, in my opinion, does that. So I think Buendia, just given the share of set pieces, and he likes to create a lot more chances in the open field, open play, Buendia is a good play for them. And then Leon Bailey, like I said, has a share of set pieces. And then John McGinn, I mean, he scored a goal last game. He is a cheap, in my opinion, but good GPP play. He has a goal ceiling upside. I like John McGinn for Aston Villa if you want to stack, Aston Villa players. And then on the other side of that matchup, Newcastle, even though they didn't look that great, Matt Ritchie, DraftKings finally changed his position designation as the defender. And that's very critical for those of you who may not know that, because defenders, if they get a clean sheet, so which means if their team does not allow any goal at the end of the game, they get bonus points. So obviously being a defender is critical, that in a way that if you think that team will win or team will tie and not give up any goal, that's a huge plus for that defender from that team. And Matt Ritchie, since he has that defender designation, that's a big plus. But also, I mean, he dominates that team's share of set pieces, and then he loves to cross the ball too. So, I mean, I love Matt Ritchie for cash purposes here. And then even GPP, I love Matt Ritchie. He's probably my favorite defender on the slate.
Let me ask you a question. Can you back to correlation? Is it okay to play guys from opponents against each other?
Yeah, you can, if you think that game will produce a lot of goals. So obviously, if you think this game will end like 3-2 or 2-1, yeah, I mean, I do think, I've seen where game stacks have won a game if they, produce more than 3-4 goals, So yeah, I mean, that's definitely.
One other question. So I see that Buendia and Bailey are both listed as midfielders. And this McGinn, no, one of them is listed. You could play him in multiple positions, right? Bailey is midfielder or forward. Now, baseball, it's like kind of important to know which slot to kind of put these guys in. Like, is if someone is available as a midfielder and a forward, is it usually better to put him as a midfielder, a forward, or it doesn't matter? Which types of players usually are well suited for the utility position, or doesn't it matter? Just give me an idea about that stuff.
Yeah, that's a good question. It depends on a slate. I'm sorry to answer you that way, but if there is a lot of players or a lot of games that are projected to have a lot of goals, that means that you're going to have a lot of players who are going to meet that threshold or ceiling in the forwards selection. So on a slate like this, I don't think there are going to be a lot of goals. I think there are going to be a lot more talented midfielders that will likely, score more points than forwards. So I would actually probably pay up at forward and then pay down at midfield, because the games on the slate are not, like three, high implied goal total games, where you're going to have a lot of goals to go, to get a share of. So I would just pay up at forward, and then I would, so that's probably the answer to that. So
okay, go ahead.
But yeah, and then the second matchup, like I said, I mean, so I don't know. I mean, Aston Villa and Newcastle, I just don't think it's gonna be a high scoring game either. And then I'll go into the second matchup, Crystal Palace and Brentford. And we mentioned this, but I have a note right here: the lowest implied total goals for this game. That means it's probably going to end 1-0, 2-1 at most. So there's not going to be enough goals to go around there. But for Crystal Palace, I mean, they are not a great DFS team, in my opinion. They like to counterattack. They don't like to possess the ball that much. They just like to move forward, but, boot the ball, so to speak. And then, sometimes they just don't have the ball enough to their feet where they can produce enough points for DFS purposes. But Zaha, I mean, if they do score a goal, it's more than likely that Zaha or Ayew, those are the two guys to focus. I mean, I have them designated for GPP purposes because I just feel like they don't have a high floor. They don't have a, share of set pieces. Sometimes they do, but more than likely they won't. And I'm not expecting them to have a lot of set pieces because the way that they play. They're not going to have the ball enough where that they get fouled, then they have a free kick or corner kick. So I just have them for GPP purposes. But if they do score a goal, more than likely one of these guys will be involved. And then this is going to be a very popular cheap punt, I think, amongst the many soccer DFS players. Riedwald, he had a share of some corner kicks. And it's rare that I think he's priced at maybe 3,000. He's going to have a share of set pieces, but he plays so deep in the back of the center midfield where he's not going to be able to produce a lot of points, peripheral points. He's not going to be the one who's going to make plays or create scoring chances. So, but, at such a cheap price, it's going to be worth a shot to, roster him and then, maybe pay up for other superstars that we'll talk about here in the next two games. And then I have another guy, Guhi. They paid a lot of money, but he's a central defender who, it's not a good position. But I mean, if you really have to punt, I think that's a good punt. So, and the other side of the matchup for Brentford, they just come off of a very nice win against a very good team in Arsenal. Brentford is another team that just got promoted to the EPL from the Championship League, which is like the tier below EPL. Every year, 3 teams from the tier below that division, they move up into the EPL, and then 3 teams in the EPL from last season get relegated down to the minor league. So it's a very interesting system. Frankly, I think it will motivate a lot of teams, and if we adopt that in the US. So I think that's an interesting system. But yeah, so Brentford obviously motivated now in the EPL. Hanging out with the big boys, coming off of a very nice win against Arsenal. Most of you guys have heard of Arsenal. Arsenal is a very good franchise. So Brentford, yeah, I love Brentford maybe to win here if I were to make a sport bet. I mean, Brentford is probably going to be my underdog of the day. I like Mbumo for GPP purposes. And Sergio Canos, I mean, he is also designated as a defender, so he has that clean sheet bonus. But he loves to go forward, and he actually plays on the winger. So he kind of plays like a forward, but he's actually still designated as a defender. And, as DraftKings probably knows that, and that's why he's the most expensive defender on the slate. But I do like him for GPP purposes because I think his expensive price will definitely, have people shy away from rostering him. But that's an interesting matchup. But like I said, it has the lowest implied total goals. Canos also takes a lot of set pieces for that team, so Canos would be an interesting GPP play, I think.
Okay, you stimulated thought, so I have 3 questions I wrote down. 2, one I just forgot to ask before, but here, first thing is what is clean sheet bonus?
Clean sheet bonus is, like I said, so if a team, so let's say Brentford wins 1-0, and then they just did not allow any goals.
Okay.
And they get bonus points after the game.
Gotcha.
For maintaining a clean sheet. Yep.
Second question. I think I figured out the answer to this. For those of you that couldn't figure this out, you just think about it. I was wondering when I was looking at these odds why Crystal Palace is a plus 160 and Brentford's also a plus 190. And I stared at it for a full 30 seconds before I figured out what it is. It says that the tie is in the middle, right?
Yep, exactly.
Okay. All right. So here's the question I had. So regarding Reedwald, and it's another question I asked all the people from the other sport, the I don't say fringe sports, but the other sports, this question. I forgot to ask you that about LOL, and now I'm going to ask you about it soccer. What type of chalk is typically good chalk, and what type of chalk is typically bad chalk with respect to soccer? For example, like in the NFL, if you have like a 3K running back who's taking over for a starter who gets injured, okay, who's going to get all the touches, that's just kind of unfadable good chalk. But when you have, say, a baseball SP2, whatever it is, that could be a very fadable bad chalk. Mm-hmm. Now, I know all slates are different or everything like that, but what type of situation, as far as chalky guys go, like, for example, Reedwald, you mentioned he's going to be pretty high owned. Is someone like that typically good chalk? And then on the other end of the extreme, if you have like the top guy in the league, some like Connor McDavid type from soccer, who's like some forward who's everybody's going to play. What type of chalk is typically good chalk, and what type of chalk is typically bad chalk in soccer?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is more correlated to the NFL. What we're talking about here is more correlated to the NFL. That's related to more NFL stuff. Like Mike Davis last year, replacing Christian McCaffrey.
Right.
I think that's more like kind of soccer. I think Reedwald is a good example here because even though he is at 3,000, he's still gonna get some share of set pieces, which means he's gonna get at least like 2-3 points here and there, just taking corner kicks. And really, I mean, at that point, you just need to get like 6 or 7 points from him. Okay. And even though his ceiling may be low, I mean, you can do worse. You can do worse than Reedwald. 3,000 is probably, I think might be the minimum price. Yeah, minimum price here. So, I mean, I just feel like there are going to be a lot of good cheap punts. But like I said, you just really, there's not going to be a negative unless they get a yellow card or red card and gets kicked out of the game. It's not gonna be like baseball pitcher where you're gonna have so many negative points, where you give up so many runs. It's not like that in soccer. He's most likely gonna get maybe 3-4 points, and that's still gonna be enough, because he's gonna be a very popular, and the ownership on him would be through the roof. I think just based on
how popular do you think someone like that is gonna be?
Probably, I'd say like 40-50%.
Okay.
There is another cheap punt that I will mention later on, but I just feel like these two guys will be very popular cheap punts.
Okay.
But then, you can do worse. It's at 3,000. I mean, really you can, but you just feel like if you play that 3,000 player, you better hope that all the expensive players that you're rostering better hit those 20 points, 15 to 20 points ceiling that those people may have. So
when you play guys like 3K, so that you could get to guys that are like 8K or 8,500 to correlate to another sport, that's kind of like a stars and scrubs type of build or whatever. Do those types of builds? I know slates are all different, but is that normally what people try to do, or do people try to do middling builds? Or if you do middling builds, is that going to be unpopular and maybe get leverage that way, or just and if you want to say everything's slate dependent, that's fine too. I'm just trying to get a sense of what's going on.
Unfortunately, it is slate dependent, but for this slate, like I said, Man City players will be very, very popular for the right reasons. I mean, they have the highest scoring odds. They have the highest favorite. They're the highest favorite. So as you can see on my screen, I mean, you're going to have so many players that you want to target for Man City, which means Man City players are, as you can see, they're naturally more expensive than probably any other team players. So yeah, I mean, you probably on a slate like this, you want to get a cheap punt somewhere if you want to build it optimally. But obviously, just like any other sport and any other DFS, I mean, if you want leverage from ownership standpoint, you can fade some of these Man City players and then, go do better than pick a player better than Riedwald, basically.
Well, it's good. I got hopefully most of the questions out of the way for the two crappy games. So now we'll get to the last two, which I'm just kind of reading between the lines here. That Manchester is going to be the popular one that rates to do well, and maybe this Leeds game could be the pivot. I don't know. Why don't you tell me about this game?
Yeah. You hit it right in the head. So I mean, Leeds versus Everton is the third matchup on the slate. Both of these teams, Leeds and Everton, love to play fast and love to create chances. That means their defense is not very good. I mean, they're going to give up a lot of goals, but they're also going to score a lot of goals. So it's more likely than not going to be an open play where they're going to create a lot of chances. So for that reason, Rafinha, I probably should have changed this, but he is probably my core play of the day. I'm probably just going to lock him in for probably almost every single one of my lineups. He takes set pieces. He took all of the set pieces in their last week. He is a great player in the open play where he creates a lot of chances. And for GPP purposes, since, he loves to pass and create plays, and more than likely not, their striker, Bamford, he's a great play for GPP purposes. He has one of the highest scoring odds on the slate, other than the Man City players. And then another player for Aston Villa, I think it's Danny Ings, who has the highest scoring odds. But nonetheless, I think this game will, blow up with goals. So for GPP purposes, I love Bamford, even though Bamford probably has about 0 to 2 points floor because he doesn't really do much other than scoring goals. I do think this, my game narrative is that they're going to have a lot of goals in this. So Rafinha is definitely a core for any contest, in my opinion. Bamford is a good GPP play. Now, a sneaky GPP play I love is Jack Harrison for Leeds. I know he struggled a lot late in the season last season, but I think it was due to some injuries that he was facing. And this year, after the long off season, I love Harrison to come back strong, and I think he's going to score some goals this season. And then Calvin Phillips, he just comes off of a play in the Euros. You guys probably saw some soccer slates, with UEFA European soccer tournament where he played for England national team, but he is a great cheap punt, just like Riedwald. I believe he is at 3,400. So that's very cheap still. The reason he's cheap is because he plays very deep in the central midfield, which is not a great position to create chances, but he is everywhere. He is very good. He's a very good player. He loves to move around a lot on the field. It's not the only position that he plays in. He loves to go on the wings at times in the game where he crosses a lot. So I love Calvin Phillips. And then he also has a share of some penalty kicks, if in case, for those of you probably know what penalty kick is, but yeah, he has a share of penalty kicks where, if there is a penalty kick, he will take some. So. And then for Everton, I think their star player, James Rodriguez, is not going to be playing. There's a rumor that he's going to be traded to another team. Somebody asked him a question about who they're playing against this week, and he didn't even know who he was playing against. So I think that kind of shows you he is just wanting to get out of Everton, and then he's going to be traded very, very soon. But he is their best player. And he's going to be missing, which creates a lot more chances for these other players on the team. I know Digne is going to be very popular. I have him designated as core, but if you are playing, let's say, Matt Ritchie, who is a defender, and then Digne is another defender, I wouldn't play both. I would choose Ritchie or Digne. For GPP, you can play both, obviously, but they're both expensive. And I think the top three defenders on the slate are Ritchie, Serge Canos, and Digne in terms of the projection and the ways that they play. But I might fade Digne, we'll see. It's feel like without James Rodriguez, like I said, Digne will get all of the share set pieces, and he will cross a lot more than when James is playing with him. So I like Digne here, but just based on the eye test in the last game, he didn't go up very much. Which means he didn't create a lot of scoring chances. So I don't really know if that translates to anything. But Calvert-Lewin is an interesting play for GPP purposes, if you think Everton's going to score some goals in this game, obviously he has the highest scoring odds for that team. So Calvert-Lewin, he scored a goal last week. So it'll be an interesting play. Townsend, he got traded to Everton this offseason. He used to play for Crystal Palace, but now he's at Everton, and he gets a share of set pieces sometimes with Digne, but he's an interesting GPP play, and he's a good player. So if you think Everton creates a lot of chances, Townsend will be a good GPP play. Well, and then, of course,
before we go on to the last game,
yep.
So there's one position which you haven't mentioned yet, and that's goalie.
Yeah.
So tell me how goalie works in soccer, because again, just to put it to another sport. So hockey, there was actually a scoring change with hockey over the last couple of years, where it used to be like really important that you had a goalie on a team that would shut the other team down or whatever it is. But they incorporated all these bonuses for saves this year. So basically the types of goalies that you wanted this year weren't even necessarily teams that were going to win. They were just going to be teams that just were going to be in really high-paced matchups where they were going to face a lot of shots. How does it work with soccer? Is goalie a really big deal as far as lineups go? What types of goalies are you looking for?
Yeah, that's a good question. But if you ask most soccer DFS touts, this is what they'll tell you, and I agree with them. Goalie, you play whoever you want.
Okay.
You play whoever fits your roster after you put in other positional players.
Okay.
Really, because based on the soccer scoring system, goalkeepers points do not vary that much.
Interesting. Okay, great.
Yeah. So it's interesting for soccer. Yeah. So really, I mean, just based on the game narratives, obviously. I mean, when I say play whoever you want, but you play whoever you want based on your game narratives, right? Like if you have a lot of players, let's say from Man City, you would obviously think that Man City is going to win, and you would want to play the goalkeeper from Man City. But if you wouldn't play Man City players, a lot of the Man City players hoping that they score a lot of goals and then play their opponent's goalie, Norwich City's goalie, you wouldn't do that. So obviously, just common sense game narratives there.
Oh, well, what's the most amount of players you'll play against your goalie?
It really depends on if you are playing a lot of those players for their goal upside. But if you are playing a lot of those players for their floors and not necessarily think that they're going to score a lot of goals, there may be that you could still play like the Norwich City's goalie, thinking that he's going to get a lot of shots on the goal and he's going to get a lot of saves, even though he may give up like 1 or 2 goals.
Okay.
That's what you're talking about for the NHL.
Yeah.
But just based on the implied goal odds, I just feel like Man City's going to score at least 2 or 3 goals. And, it's not like Man City is very good in front of the goal. They're going to score a lot of goals. So I just feel like Norwich City's goalie is not a good play. But in other matchups, like on the slate, Crystal Palace, Brentford, there may not be a lot of shots to go around because they play differently. Both teams play differently, but just the fact that Brentford had a lot of shots in their last game. I mean, Crystal Palace's goalie, I think Guaita, I mean, he's not going to be a bad play. I think he's going to be a very popular play as well, because I think they're the favorite in that matchup and they have the lowest implied total goal odds. And for goalie, I spoke about the defenders, the clean sheet bonus, but goalies also get a clean sheet bonus. 2 more points than a defender. I think they get 5 points for a clean sheet, whereas the defenders get 3 points clean sheet bonus. And then if they end up winning, they get another bonus, just like a pitcher in MLB DFS or NHL DFS. If your team ends up winning.
So clean sheet. I thought clean sheet's not a shutout. That means
clean sheet is a shutout.
Oh, but you'll win. But if you get a clean sheet, that doesn't necessarily mean you win.
Yeah, because it could be 0-0. It could be tied.
Oh, got it. So one more thing before we get to this last game, which is obviously the most important game. So I figured I'd have everybody's attention first. So I see all these games start at the same time. How do you sweat these games? In other words, like what resources are there for live looking at these games? I know there's the channels that you could watch, one game on TV. Is there like a site that will stream all the games?
Yeah, Peacock. Just like the Olympics, you have to buy Peacock to watch, U.S. men's basketball games. But yeah, so NBC has rights to these games. But the live scoring website that I use, I know a lot of people use this for other sports, but SofaScore, SofaScore or Flash Score, those are the websites that I use that have up-to-date live statistics and everything. So.
Okay, so let's get into this last game. Go ahead, go for it.
Yeah, so Man City minus, I think at one point it was minus 1,000. I mean, that's probably gonna be the biggest odds as a favorite in the entire season, I think. I mean, Man City, the best team in the league, going up against the worst team in Norwich City that just got promoted to the EPL. I think Man City will dominate, just like the odds indicate. But like I said, Man City will be very popular. If you're building a cash lineup, yeah, I mean, you have to have at least 2 or 3 Man City players, if not 4. But obviously, they're going to be very expensive, and that's why I mentioned some punt plays earlier. But yeah, I mean, De Bruyne, he is injured, and he only played, I think, 11 minutes last game after subbing in. There is a chance that he may start, but he hasn't been training during the week, and I don't think he's going to start. But if he does start, he is an automatic lock. He is the best player in the EPL, or maybe in the world, other than Messi or Ronaldo, as you guys know. But yeah, De Bruyne, he's probably the best player in the EPL. So if he starts, lock him in for cash purposes. For GPP, I mean, I could fade him. I could see definitely a way to fade him because he may not play all 90 minutes. He may play 60 minutes even if he starts. So I could definitely see a play where you can fade him. Now, Man City has, like I said, I mean, in EPL, this is an interesting point to you, to everybody, but EPL does not have a salary cap, just like NFL or NBA, where, they're limited to get certain, like, really good players. I mean, Man City is, owned by, some of the oil companies out in the Middle East. So they have unlimited amount of resources. And so they have so many great players on that team. So it really depends on who they're going to start in the front 3. And this is what you kind of talked about, Sheets, earlier about you really have to check the starting lineups at 9 a.m. Eastern time before the slate locks. I think soccer, more important than any other sports, you have to see not only who's starting, but where people line up. So, for example, Riyad Mahrez and Jack Grealish that I have on the list here, they're going to be very popular. But for example, Jack Grealish, he could play in the midfield instead of he plays a forward position.
Do they announce that before the game?
Yeah.
They're going to play? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do. Like I said, on those sites like SofaScore and Flash Score, but sometimes they're not 100% accurate.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I would check multiple websites just to make sure. But that's kind of the insider knowledge that I will have. I'll be in the Discord channel. If you think that, it doesn't make any sense formation wise, you can ask me. And I usually know like what makes sense and what doesn't because I've just been watching a lot. But yeah, Jack Grealish, that's a great example where if he is in one of the top 3 positions, the striker positions, I mean, he's more than likely going to create a lot more scoring chances, goals or assists. But he is also more than capable of playing in the central midfield role or on the side. That's going to be deeper in the midfield, so he's not going to be able to create as many scoring chances. So, it really depends on the formation and then the fact that they're starting. So I would just check the formation, at 9 a.m. And if you guys have any questions, let me know, like I said. But those 3 players up top, they usually play the 4-4-3-3 formation where they have 3 strikers up top. And those are the players that tend to score a lot more goals than any other player on that team. And it really depends on who's going to start, but I would just look out for that. And any of those 3 guys would be a good play because of the high scoring odds in this game. And then another good position to look at for soccer DFS purposes, I haven't mentioned this, but I kind of implied it earlier by talking about Digne and Caños and Richie, the defenders. These are the defenders. If you look at the formation, they play on the side of the field, which I'll show you guys an example of on the screen after this. But Cancelo and Zinchenko or Mendy for Manchester City are those wingers or wingbacks. fullbacks that, play on the side, which means they like to go up and down on the side of the fields near the sidelines and cross a lot of balls. So obviously that naturally will translate into, creating scoring chances, putting the balls in the boxes. So those players will be a good play as well for Man City.
I have couple questions. So this doesn't happen too often. Obviously, a team, be a 10-1 favorite or whatever it is. But is it possible that, I don't know how these leagues work. If Manchester City goes up like 3-0, is there a risk of them like subbing out their starters or no?
Yes. Okay. That's a great question. And even if they're not up, if it's 0-0, and then, the Man City manager or coach thinks that they're not playing well and they need goals to win, they're going to sub in some players. And especially those people up top, the ones that I mentioned, like Mahrez, Grealish, Jesus, or Sterling, those strikers will get subbed out, and then they'll put in some new players usually around the 70th minute. So, yeah, I mean, there is risk for any of these teams. But Man City, especially, like I said, that's the it's like a double-edged sword where they have so many good players, so much depth on their bench, but that also means that they have a substitution risk that is higher than any other team that may not have the same type of talent on their bench. So
and there are a couple of examples, again, only because it's you. I'm aligning it back to LOL. Like there were some especially these 2-game slates, there were some situations where one team was like such a big favorite that they, one way to look at it was, well, even though they're such a big favorite, they really know they don't have to do all that much. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So they don't have to win 20-0. They could just kind of screw around, you know what I mean? And just do whatever. Is that the way it works in soccer? I guess it's just, goals are so hard to come by that you don't want to put yourself in that tough of a position by screwing around. I guess that they're going all out most of the time, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's opposite in soccer.
Okay.
Not going to fool around. They're always going to try to score goals.
Okay.
There are some teams that when they go up 1-0 or 2-0, they like to, just scale back and just play defensively the rest of the game. But the teams that are heavily favored, like Manchester City, and elite teams like Man City, they're not going to be the ones who do that. They always try to push forward. And they're always going to have the ball to themselves a lot more, like possession-wise. So obviously that's going to translate into a lot of peripheral points. They're going to make a lot of passes and create chances, and just having a lot of possession of the ball. So
okay.
But yeah, let me show you some things real quick. How do I screen change? Sorry, this is new to me.
That's okay. So to kind of flex a little bit. So this is gonna predate you, but so growing up in New Jersey, my next door neighbor and my son's best friend, his father was probably at the time the most famous soccer player in the world. My next door neighbor was a man named Giorgio Canaglia, who he was basically the most famous soccer player in the United States. He used to play for Italy. We actually would go to like the Cosmos practices in New York when they were still there, and that was a lot of fun. We're still friendly with the son. The father passed away within the last like 5 or 6 years.
Oh, sorry, but yeah, that's cool. That's a cool story.
Yep.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, you might have to start playing some soccer DFS, Eric. So.
You didn't see last week, kid. I played lineups. I got 8th in the big GPP.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. So yeah, as you can see, I mean, I like I said, I like Rafinha a lot. I like Rafinha, and then let's see, I like Matt Ritchie a lot. So those are probably my top 2 core plays. Okay. I'll probably have in probably almost every single one of my lineups. And then if you go to, let's see, SofaScore, that's a good resource to go to. So as you can see all these soccer games. So like for tomorrow, you'll see that.
And what's that heat map on the bottom, like next to Yasin? What is that?
Yeah, that'll be. I'll show you. So let's see, Man City. So as you can see, the odds are astronomical here. This is the projected lineup as to how they think this company thinks that they're going to line up.
Okay.
But it's not always accurate, so don't read too much into this. But yeah, if you go to their previous matchup, so let's see at the bottom here, they played against Tottenham last week, and you'll see what the formation was last week. Here you see Torres started up top with Mahrez and Sterling. And then, like I said, Jack Grealish played in the central position. He didn't play up here. He did after Sterling got subbed out. But if this is the case, I'm not liking Grealish as much. If he played up top as one of the top threes on the firm formation, I would love Grealish more. But here, I just do not. So
they lost their first game.
They did. Tottenham is a good team. These are the top two teams, probably top 5 teams at least in the EPL. So it's not hugely surprising. And they were minus 180. So so it was an upset. Yeah.
Oh, that they're gonna. Yeah. There goes my theory about them taking it easy on anybody. They're coming off the loss. They're gonna murder them if they can.
Exactly. They're gonna be pissed off. And so anyway. So the heat map is just for each player. So let's see. So Grealish, I'll show you about heat map. So if you click on his name, you'll see the heat map, which means that that red spot is where he moved around a lot on the field.
Okay.
So that's kind of where you would like it to be. You would want to see up here more if you are wanting for DFS points, because up here is where you're going to cross a lot of balls and put the ball into the boxes. But so I don't like that as much as if you were up here. So anyway, and then you can kind of see how many, key passes he made, which creates a lot of scoring chances. And then crosses, he only had 1 cross. That's horrible. So because you get points for, cross, and shots on target 1, so it's not, he didn't have a very good game, but he is the big acquisition that Man City made by paying, shit amount of money, seriously, to get him at Man City. So he will be involved, but, we'll see. I'm not a huge believer. So anyway, this is the website that I usually use, but also you talked about RotoWire, but RotoWire has a very good soccer team there. So if you go to their soccer, I only mentioned this because this is probably the only site where they have this kind of stats. So if you go to EPL and then go to team trends, it's very simple. It tells you how many minutes each player played last game or throughout the entire season. And then if you go to offense, if you go to cross, and then it tells you how many crosses each of these players had. Like, for example, I'll show you about Rafinha, why he will be my core play. He is playing for Leeds. So here, he had 7 crosses against Manchester United, which is one of the top teams in the league. And then corners, let's see how many corners he took comparatively, percentage-wise. He's the only player on that team that took all 4 corners for that team. He had 100% share, so
okay, so I'll do another follow-up question. So how reliable or how much does past performance indicate future performance with respect to the main stats in soccer? In other words, like in baseball, just because a guy hit a home run the day before, or even got a hit the day before, it doesn't mean he's going to get one the next day or whatever it is. Where in basketball, if a guy plays, if LeBron plays 40 minutes, he's going to average his range of outcomes is going to be relatively small because it's basketball. But what about soccer? Like if you have a guy who projects, is the highest scoring guy, like in soccer, how often does he actually do well? In other words, does the top player on Manchester United, does he get zeros? You know what I mean? Or is his results usually pretty evenly distributed?
Yeah, they're pretty consistent.
Okay.
More than any sport.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, only because goals. Yeah, when you're talking about goals do not come by often. Like I said, goals are kind of, that's not a good indicator of how to measure consistency. But if you, but for crosses and these peripheral points that are more consistent, because these guys are literally put in position on the field to do these types of things.
Okay.
They're guaranteed a share of kicking the ball into the boxes on corner kicks.
Yep.
And it's not like they're not going to get those opportunities. Kind of like in baseball, I mean, you get at bat chances, but it's not consistently where they're going to get a hit or home run or whatever. So, but yeah, so soccer is a little different. I mean, it's a good indicator. So more than likely, you look at their floors by just looking at how many crosses they had or how many corners they had throughout the season. So yeah, that's why I think Rafinha, this is a good indicator why he's going to perform well. He's going to be put in position to put in a lot of crosses and corners on the field. So yeah, it's a good question, but more than any other sport, it's a good indicator. So, but yeah, which also means, I mean, that's why for GPP strategies for soccer, it really comes down to who you think will score goals and then just play from the ownership leverage standpoint. So obviously, Rafinha will be popular in cash games, but then will he score 1 or 2 goals? And if Leeds ends up scoring 3 goals, is he gonna get a share of those? Probably, but then you want to have a player on that team who's gonna score those goals, that come from Rafinha's passes. So I think it really is interesting. I think just from the ownership standpoint. And a lot of people just refer to the scoring odds and then just pick the players that have better scoring odds. But like for Man City, there are going to be so many goals, in my opinion, that you want to look at some other players that are not as popular or highly owned. So for example, like in the midfield, like if Gundogan starts, I mean, he won't be as highly owned as like Mahrez and Torres. I was talking about Grealish. And also Rodri, if he starts somehow, I mean, so obviously you're just playing from the leverage standpoint. If there are going to be a lot of goals, there is a chance that some of these, lower owned guys will get a share of those goals. So yeah, I mean, just like any other GPP strategy, ownership leverage. So that'll be an interesting thing, but you don't want to differentiate yourself too much. Like you don't want to play 3-4 players from the Brentford versus Crystal Palace game, thinking that game will end up like 5 goals. But that's, more than likely that's not going to happen. The better GPP strategy would be get lower owned players from this game. That's Man City game where they're going to have a lot more goals. So.
All right. So that's a lot. And listen, guys, if you're going to play the soccer, I mean, I strongly advise you to, participate in whatever videos Chan is nice enough to puts out. I also recommend you get into the Discord and get whatever information there. And you can use my industry sheets, which I compile with projections and ownerships, and you can use those in your lineup builders if you want MME and stuff like that. But I'm really looking forward to more of this stuff. And I'll leave you guys with this. It's really interesting. I was thinking about back in the days when I'd be playing poker and I have like 18 poker tables going up on my screen at once. And my wife would come in and she's like, oh my God, you're just playing all these games or whatever it is. So I always used to have something. I always had something going on, aside from my normal businesses, whether it was chess, then it was backgammon, then it became poker. And if I told my wife back when I was playing poker that, X years from then, I would have 2 monitors going, and on the left monitor, I would be looking at the soccer players for DFS, which I didn't even know existed, and on the right, seeing these guys play these Asian video game players, watching Fnatic close out misfits, whoever the hell those people are, as opposed to the 18 poker. My wife would say I'm crazy, but you know what? It's awesome. And I really enjoy learning about these new things, whether it be new sports, new endeavors, new whatever. And I'm really, and I tell my son this all the time. He's at UVA, and I say, listen, the brain is not unlike any other organism. If you don't use it every day, it will atrophy. So every day, I always try to learn something, and I will consider this day in the plus. I'm gonna close this out. Thank you very, very much, and I will post this up soon. I got this one taken care of.
Thank you.
All right. See you later.